In 1992, a Soviet geologist was found dead in a frozen cabin near the Ural Mountains. His belongings had been ransacked, except one, a locked steel case marked A9 Codex. Inside were photos of stone tablets pulled from an ice fissure. The symbols carved into them matched, character for character, a DNA segment not sequenced until 2003. How did a Bronze Age culture describe gene expression? Why did his field partner vanish 2 weeks later? The tablets were never published. The case was classified, then sealed. That archive is now missing. And it's only one of at least 10 similar caches, discovered, silenced, erased. Artifacts pulled from bedrock. Coordinates deleted from satellite logs. If these stories are true, the past isn't what we think. 10 archives. One truth they tried to erase. From Arctic ice cores to Vatican sublevels, from South American cave systems to abandoned cosmodromes, traces of a different history surface, only to vanish again. Most go unnoticed. A log misfiled. A dig site closed early. A radio frequency dismissed as interference. But sometimes, the fragments align, and when they do, they point to something larger. There is a pattern, in case after case, a discovery that challenges accepted history. A brief moment of exposure, recorded, witnessed, sometimes published. Then, disappearance. Silence. The terminology repeats across borders. Reclassified. No longer available. Unfit for public distribution. Identical phrasing. Identical protocol. 10 locations. 10 archives. Different languages. Different governments. But the same response. Always the same response. Some of these documents surfaced by accident. Mislabeled. Misfiled. Missed in a sweep. Others were leaked by insiders, briefly, before the original source was shut down. And a few were hidden in plain sight, boxed in university sub-basements with no catalog tag, or buried inside military software with irrelevant file names. And then there are the human costs. Careers destroyed, visas revoked, sudden accidents. One translator was found dead in a hotel room in Prague, surrounded by burned paper. His last known job, decoding a scroll recovered from story number 6. If these events were unrelated, the pattern wouldn't exist. But the footprints match. The silence is structured. And in 2025, silence starts to expire. This year marks the sunset of multiple Cold War-era secrecy laws, especially in Eastern Europe and Latin America. Pages once sealed are surfacing. Not all were meant to. One archive links to another. Coordinates overlap. Frequency patterns recur across decades. And the first story isn't speculation. It's already classified. In May 1968, amateur diver Paul Bannister was exploring the submerged limestone formations off Bimini Island, known locally as the Bimini Road. At a depth of 22 feet, wedged between 2 coral shelves, he discovered a metallic cylinder sealed with bronze wire. Bannister surfaced and handed it off to a research team affiliated with the University of Miami. 2 weeks later, he was found unconscious in his boat, dehydrated, disoriented, and unable to recall the location. Inside the cylinder was a tightly rolled sheet of unknown alloy, measuring 46 centimeters wide and covered in engraved symbols. Dr. Harold Messenger, a metallurgist brought in by NOAA, analyzed the surface and concluded the scroll was made of an iron-magnesium compound not naturally found in the region. The engravings, when translated by comparative linguist Joan Kersey, appeared to describe a sequence of structures meant to dampen seismic activity using magnetic resonance, a technology unrecognized in any known Bronze Age culture. The translation was never published. NOAA labeled the object archaeologically non-conforming and transferred it to a private research facility in North Carolina. Kersey received a formal cease and desist letter 2 months later, warning her not to disclose classified geotechnical inscriptions. When she refused, her research visa was revoked and her academic funding suspended. She relocated to Finland and never published again. By 1972, no official record of the manuscript remained. It was excluded from the University of Miami's expedition report. Bannister left diving permanently. NOAA has never acknowledged possession of the artifact. FOIA requests filed between 1987 and 2004 were returned with the phrase, "No such document exists under the reference title." Dr. Messenger died in a car accident in 1975. His laboratory notes were never recovered. Kersey later claimed in a recorded interview that the scroll referenced other sites, 7 in total, where identical materials were allegedly stored. One of them, she said, lay beneath a copper ridge in the northern steppe. That phrase will return in Story 6. He missed his daughter's graduation the year the manuscript vanished. But that was just the first document sealed by NOAA that year. In October 1974, Soviet radio astronomer Alexei Taranenko recorded a repeating signal at 10.2 GHz, narrowband, phase-locked, and non-random. The source appeared to originate from the Cygnus constellation. He was working under Project Altair, a classified deep space monitoring program based out of Alma-Ata in present-day Kazakhstan. Taranenko logged 3 distinct bursts across 17 days. Each followed a triple harmonic pattern later compared to hydrogen resonance, but offset by a factor of 1.618, the golden ratio. On the third detection, a secondary anomaly appeared. A low decibel echo signal that returned within 0.72 seconds. A physical impossibility given the source's cosmic distance. 6 months later, while reviewing satellite photos for an unrelated dig near the Altai Mountains, a separate Soviet geology team uncovered a burial chamber containing a metal tablet. Engraved on its face, identical harmonic sequences matching Taranenko's signal data. The tablet dated to approximately 9th century BCE. The alloy composition was not of regional origin. The logbooks, tablet, and site report were transferred to the Ministry of Geodesy and Cartography. Taranenko's project was immediately reassigned. In internal memos, the Altair signal was labeled natural interference, and no further analysis was authorized. The burial chamber was resealed. Taranenko disappeared from all public publications after 1976. His pension was revoked. No explanation was provided. In 1991, a portion of the original frequency log was smuggled out during the Soviet collapse. The document passed through the hands of 3 private collectors before surfacing briefly online in 2008, then vanishing again. The waveform diagram from page 6 reappeared in a Chilean geology journal in 2011, embedded as background noise in a sonar reading. The match was exact. The technician who published that Chilean graph died 3 weeks later of sudden cardiac failure. The journal issue was pulled and reissued without explanation. Taranenko's wife later told a BBC Russian correspondent, "He stopped sleeping. He said it wasn't a signal we received. He said it was something we triggered. He never came home after the project ended, and yet the Mongolian artifact vanished from archives by 1980. In 1892, during an excavation outside the ancient port of Smyrna, modern-day Izmir, a team led by British archaeologist Henry Thwaite uncovered a sealed clay chamber beneath a collapsed Hellenistic temple. Inside were 6 tablets, carbon dated later to approximately 1100 BCE. But what disturbed Thwaite wasn't the age, it was the content. Each tablet described a celestial object called the second eye, visible only every 8,150 days. The language referred to it as a watcher moon and described tidal cycles and electrical discharges associated with its return. Most unsettling of all, one phrase repeated across 3 tablets mentioned a species named the refused kin, a being described as human in structure but absent in blood. The tablets were quietly moved to London in 1893 under the British Museum's Near East collection. They were tagged, catalogued, then immediately sequestered in a secure wing due to their mythologically contaminated context. For over a century, they remained sealed, never displayed, never cited. In 2006, a break-in occurred at the museum. Nothing else was stolen. Just one artifact case was removed. Surveillance footage showed no entries or exits that night. The museum's response was unorthodox. They deleted the tablet's accession number from the public database and issued no press release. In internal logs, the entire Smyrna subfile was marked deaccessioned. A month later, an anonymous letter was sent to the Royal Society of Antiquaries. It contained high-resolution photographs of 2 of the missing tablets, taken on microfilm, dated 1972. The photos were traced back to an Oxford linguist, Dr. Clement Farrow, who had requested access under the pretense of studying pre-Dorian trade languages. Farrow was found dead in his home in 2007, apparent overdose. His notes were burned in the fireplace. The coroner's report listed intent unknown. One photo, still uncatalogued, shows the 5th tablet. At its center, a sigil that matches a carved motif recently uncovered in a Chilean cave system. That motif will reappear in Story 8. In his final letter, Farrow wrote, "They were not our ancestors. They were the ones we replaced." His housekeeper found the oven still on. If this was coincidence, the next entry would break the pattern. On March 14, 1995, engineers at the Jicamarca Radio Observatory, east of Lima, were recalibrating the site's 50 MHz radar array when they recorded a brief, symmetrical burst of radiation. Duration, 1.09 seconds. The signal came from directly beneath the facility. The waveform signature was geometric, spiking at exact Fibonacci intervals. When analyzed using Fourier transformation, it revealed a double-loop harmonic pattern, anomalously similar to a low-yield hydrogen decay field, but too structured to occur in natural subsurface resonance. The anomaly was dismissed by senior staff as interference, but a junior technician flagged it for comparison against archived data. What she found was disturbing. A nearly identical signal had been recorded at CERN during an experiment in late 1989. That event had also been marked Unexplained Oscillation and sealed under CERN Internal Memo A7104 Restricted. 2 weeks after the Jicamarca detection, a previously undocumented Inca subfoundation was uncovered during nearby infrastructure digging. The construction company halted work after laborers began reporting acute disorientation and electromagnetic pressure. Photographs of the chamber, taken before backfill, show a repeating motif on the stone walls. 8 concentric arcs surrounding a bifurcated sphere. That symbol also appears in the smuggled Altair frequency log from Story 2. Within 30 days, the site was purchased in full by an unnamed subsidiary linked to an American defense contractor. Jicamarca's staff were issued revised security protocols. The radar burst log was wiped from all physical servers. The technician who flagged the pattern was reassigned without explanation and later diagnosed with severe vestibular dysfunction. Her brother later said she stopped answering calls. She told him someone had taken her access badge while she was asleep. No scientific publication ever cited the March 14th signal. No archaeological survey was filed for the dig site. The original radar system at Jicamarca was quietly decommissioned in 1997. Its replacement was built with a hardened signal gate, unusually restrictive for a civilian research installation. One surviving memo, unsigned, contains a 6-word note written by hand. The ground should not be answering. She never boarded the plane she was booked on. But what's hidden under that ruin was never publicly excavated. In the summer of 1983, geophysicist Dr. Valentin Kovalev led a survey expedition near Norilsk, Siberia, part of a long-range mineral scan for sub-permafrost tungsten. On June 11th, his team's magnetometer detected a spike from a depth of 43 meters, localized, non-ferrous, and emitting faint thermal radiation. They drilled. What they extracted wasn't ore. Buried in the frozen substrate was a sealed lead container, cube-shaped, lined with quartz fiber, and engraved with a spiral lattice unknown to any documented script. Inside, a spool of thin, flexible fiber, jet black, weightless in air, but immune to flame. Under electron microscopy, the material exhibited a hexagonal carbon weave with superconductive alignment, properties still not reproducible today. Kovalev labeled it Artifact M13 and filed a restricted report with the Leningrad Physical Institute. Within 5 days, his team was disbanded. Lab equipment was confiscated by state security under Order 47 Delta. One assistant was detained for sedition. The lead container was relocated to an off-books facility in Murmansk. Kovalev himself was reassigned to teach basic geology in a remote technical college. All further inquiries were blocked. The fiber was never seen again. Some argue the box was Cold War-era experimental waste, perhaps a fragment from a failed aerospace materials test. But no known Soviet laboratory ever claimed its design. No technical manual matches the container's structure. Its composition included trace elements, hafnium 192, iron 60, not common in terrestrial metallurgy. More disturbingly, a line of microtext was laser-etched along the inner rim of the lid. It read, "Do not wake the pattern." Years later, a former FSB analyst leaked a partial facility manifest from Murmansk Base 9. M1389 is listed. Last entry dated March 1996. The box had been moved. The destination was redacted. In a rare interview given before his death in 2002, Kovalev said only one thing. "They told me it came from below, but it wasn't ours, and it wasn't theirs either." He died with frostbite on both feet in summer. Yet no Soviet patent or facility ever claimed it. In 2010, a whistleblower within the Vatican library anonymously leaked a single high-resolution scan of a manuscript page. The document, labeled Codex 39, contained glyphs from no known script, written in vertical triplets, interspersed with geometric diagrams. Linguistic AI run on the image estimated syntax complexity equivalent to Sanskrit. Yet, no root structure matched any existing language. The whistleblower claimed the manuscript had been sealed since 1742 in sublevel D, a section of the Vatican archive known to house texts deemed theologically destabilizing. Codex 39 bore no author, no date, and no provenance. According to the leak, its discovery predated the Gregorian calendar. The translated fragment read, "They plant time in layers. Those who awaken out of sequence are taken offline." One of the diagrams showed a double spiral intersected by radial lines, nearly identical to the seismic echo recorded at Jicamarca in 1995. In the margin of the same page was a handwritten Latin annotation, possibly from the 18th century. "Copper Ridge, Step 7, do not return." That phrase, Copper Ridge was mentioned decades earlier by Dr. Joan Kersey in connection with the Bimini manuscript, Story 1. Shortly after the image leaked, the Vatican denied all knowledge of Codex 39. When independent linguists requested access, they received formal replies stating the document was incongruent with catalogued holdings. Within 6 months, the entire sublevel D wing was reportedly recatalogued, and the archivist responsible for pre-19th century anomalies was reassigned without public explanation. A former Jesuit scholar, speaking under condition of anonymity, claimed to have seen the full text. He said the codex described entities without anchor, capable of traversing memory outside linear time. The text, he said, reads you back. He left the priesthood the same year. The scan was eventually removed from the hosting server. All known reposts were taken down via international DMCA notices filed from Rome. One server log shows a single IP attempting to access the file 3,482 times within 1 hour. The original whistleblower was never identified. In 2014, a private researcher attempted to recreate the glyphs using AI generative models. His system froze mid-render. His lab notes included the phrase, "Glyphs broke causal stream." The project was abandoned. His wife found him sitting in the dark, repeating the same question. If they erased us once, what stops them again? She never saw him enter that room. A year after this surfaced, the Vatican sealed its sub-level D archive. On July 3, 2002, a Cosmodrome module launched from Baikonur carrying a 5-person military payload designated Unit V-47. Their mission? To test orbital stability systems near decaying Soviet-era satellites. The flight was normal. Descent began on schedule. But what happened in the final 7 minutes of re-entry remained sealed under Kazakh Defense Directive 447 Theta. What little is known comes from a corrupted audio log retrieved from the capsule's secondary black box, salvaged during a post-landing inspection. The final 3 minutes of the recording contains static, interrupted by clipped dialogue. One voice, identified later as Lieutenant Igor Navrashenko, states, "The capsule was opened. I repeat, it was already open from the outside, before we landed." Seconds later, a high-frequency burst distorts the channel, followed by a phrase repeated in a whisper. It's not memory. It's simulation feedback. No official report mentions any anomaly. The capsule was listed as mission complete, no deviation. But satellite logs show the craft deviated from its re-entry path by 12 kilometers and touched down less than 40 miles from the abandoned Altair monitoring station described in Story 2. No debrief footage exists. The 5 officers of Unit V-47 were reassigned. Within 8 months, 3 had medically retired. 1 emigrated to Armenia and cut off all contact. Lieutenant Navrashenko died in 2004, officially listed as a suicide. His autopsy, released via a document leak in 2017, noted extensive ocular scarring and linear dermal disruptions consistent with high-dose electromagnetic exposure. In 2008, a private satellite technician working for a French aerospace company found an untagged transmission embedded in archived telemetry data from the mission. The waveform pattern embedded in the burst matches the golden ratio altered frequency from the Altair signal. She filed a private report. 3 days later, her home was broken into. Only her computer tower was taken. Navrashenko's widow, speaking once to a journalist in 2010, said, "He couldn't close his eyes. He said they stayed open even in the dark. He said memory didn't belong to us." She never gave another interview. His final transmission was cut mid-sentence. No backup exists. In August 2011, a Chilean geology team from the Universidad Austral set up vibration sensors in the Nahuel Buta range to monitor subterranean fault lines. The site, located above a granite cave system known for unexplored depths, had been dormant for decades. On August 14th at 03:07 local time, every instrument in the array triggered a seismic alert. But no quake occurred. What they recorded instead was a sonar echo, originating 8.6 kilometers below the surface and returning in 1.3 seconds. That depth exceeds natural chamber acoustics. The waveform, designated return signal 197H, was structurally impossible. It mapped into a Fibonacci indexed interval across 4 harmonics. When analyzed, the frequency matched exactly the Altair signal from 1974, Story 2, and the Jicamarca burst from 1995, Story 4. The probability of this occurring by coincidence, according to the lead geophysicist, was less than 1 in 108. But there was more. Photographs taken during the cave mapping show a sigil carved repeatedly into the stone, a motif of 8 concentric arcs surrounding a bifurcated sphere. That symbol also appears in one of the leaked Smyrna tablet photos from 2006, Story 3. In the Chilean version, however, the glyph is accompanied by a line of text, etched in pre-Columbian dialect, but clearly referencing motion through time. The phrase, loosely translated, reads, "They echo backward from what must not arrive." The local dig was shut down within 72 hours. A regional security team arrived without explanation. All university hardware was seized under order of the Ministerio del Interior. The lead geophysicist resigned and has not spoken publicly since. When reached by a private investigator in 2018, he reportedly replied, "They're not coming. They're remembering forward." One graduate student uploaded a partial sonogram of the signal to an anonymous FTP server. It was deleted within 36 hours. When reposted on a separate mirror in 2013, it triggered an automatic copyright takedown, filed by a US-based satellite communications company. The student later left Chile. He declined all interviews. His twin brother was last seen entering the cave system during an unauthorized return trip. Rescue teams found no trace, only his boots. Set neatly beside the entrance, he never came out. That same harmonic appears in a 1964 Vatican seismograph. In November 1991, a systems technician at the Arecibo Observatory named Carlos Hinojosa was running post-processing checks on recorded signal archives. Room 4 stored legacy tape reels. Raw, unfiltered captures from the facility's sky sweeps dating back to the early 80s. One reel, labeled October 16, 1977, was indexed as uneventful. But Hinojosa noticed something. 5 minutes before the now famous wow signal, a short burst appeared. Non-random, triadic waveform, double harmonic curve. The burst lasted 0.91 seconds. He pulled the waveform into an oscilloscope overlay. The result matched the 1974 Altair signal within 0.003 variants. He ran it again. The Jicamarca imprint from 1995, identical frequency envelope. 3 labs, 3 decades, same pattern. Then came the phrase, buried in the tape's magnetic trace. Possibly an unintentional artifact of signal interference. A spectrogram sweep revealed embedded data. The word reverse in 7 languages, all uppercase, all overlapping. The waveform displayed a Fibonacci alignment signature across its resolution curve. He reported the anomaly to a supervisor. Within 48 hours, tape room 4 was cleared. Reels were moved to a temporary facility for degaussing and preservation. The incident was not logged in the observatory's monthly summary. Hinojosa was placed on administrative leave. 3 months later, he relocated to Yucatan and was never heard from again. Attempts to contact him failed. His home was found empty. No forwarding record filed. The audio reel was presumed lost. But in 2006, a retired Arecibo engineer shared a private backup, an off-site duplication made without authorization. The copy had degraded, but one frame, the one containing the burst, remained intact. It showed a marginal annotation in red pen. Do not match to Altair, 1974, classified. The handwriting matched a former Project Altair supervisor. Later that same year, a separate researcher traced electromagnetic anomalies in Chile, Story 8, to a specific triangulation path, forming a perfect alignment between Arecibo, Jicamarca, and the former Altair station near the Altai Mountains. The three observatories, geographically disparate, politically unaligned, recorded the same harmonic within a 37-year span. Each signature preceded a major memory loss incident, electromagnetic health anomaly, or asset disappearance. None of the facilities acknowledged the link. The retired engineer who leaked the backup suffered a stroke during a live interview. His final words were, "They were never signals. They were pings." He died before paramedics arrived. All three labs, Altair, Arecibo, and Jicamarca, filed loss reports in the same week. In January 2023, a multinational research team drilling at the Greenland Ice Sheet Project 2 site extracted a core segment dated to approximately 3.04 million years ago, the Pliocene epoch. At 2,931 meters, a lab technician noticed a fracture pattern too symmetrical to be natural. The team scanned the segment using 3D LiDAR. What emerged was staggering. Inside the ice, distributed across micro fissures, was a repeating structure. Hexagonal shell patterns spaced at Fibonacci intervals, forming a fractal array. Total length of the array, 21.3 centimeters, precision, sub-millimeter. No known glacial process can produce it. The formation was designated Memory Shell X and immediately isolated for deeper analysis. When cooled to 40 digs and bombarded with ultrasound, the array reflected structured frequency harmonics. At 1618 kHz, it returned a modulated pulse. The waveform echoed patterns from Altair, Story 2, Jicamarca, Story 4, and Arecibo, Story 9. But embedded within the harmonic was a binary sequence. When decoded, this is not the first iteration. A second pulse followed, then silence. The research team filed an encrypted preliminary report with the European Cryoarchaeological Council. Before review, the sample chamber experienced a sudden pressure inversion, one not physically possible within sealed containment. The ice shattered. The fracture lines formed a sigil, 8 arcs around a bifurcated core, matching the Chilean glyph, Story 8, and the Smyrna motif, Story 3. 3 days later, the lab was shut down. The core data was moved to an unnamed facility in Zurich. All team members signed indefinite NDAs. 2 transferred to unrelated institutions. 1 emigrated to South Africa. The technician who first flagged the anomaly was hospitalized after a reported fugue state lasting 19 hours. No public paper was released. No imaging archive remains accessible. But one photograph exists. A research assistant took a personal snapshot of the LiDAR monitor moments before the array registered the second pulse. It shows a second shell, slightly misaligned, half-formed, a spiral growing out of sync. The file name, shellxx2 finaldraft.jpg. Metadata shows the file was last opened 3 days after the facility was decommissioned. The assistant, when interviewed anonymously, said, "It was nested signal logic. The core remembered the last version of the planet. And it wasn't this one. He missed his mother's funeral that week. But the final entry is dated 3 days after the site was shut down. If the Greenland data is real, if even one harmonic trace or buried glyph points to a true archive, then our history is not just incomplete, it's curated. What would it mean if time isn't linear, but layered? If what we call memory is signal residue, and those signals are still active? If the same pattern keeps emerging across ice, stone, and signal, then either reality is glitching or something older is trying to reassert itself. None of the 10 archives exist in official records. All were sealed, erased, or discredited. But the people who found them? They left traces. Logs, fragments, a second shell. And for every signal we recovered, we lost someone. You could argue this is myth, that glyphs are just symbols, that frequencies mean nothing without intent. You could argue none of this is real. But the math is real. The deaths are real. The pattern is consistent. So we're left with a single question, buried beneath every ice layer, sealed in every closed archive. If this isn't our first iteration, who built the one before? They erased it. We found 10 pieces. What you do next decides whether they disappear again. Do you archive it or burn it?